Charleston Forum is back for its 5th year, and this year it has a heavy focus on education. I talk one-on-one with Brian Duffy, the president and the chairman of the board of the Charleston Forum, for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Brian Duffy, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you, sir. Always glad to be with you, Quintin.
You're very welcome. Obviously, you are the CEO of the chairman of the board of the Charleston Forum, and the Charleston Forum is kicking off its 5th annual event on obviously Tuesday with conversations about the newly released data on how the Tri-County public school districts can address some fundamental issues. What have you learned since Tuesday, Brian?
Well, I tell you what, Quintin, Tuesday was a great day where we had superintendents and chairman of the boards from Charleston County School District, Dorchester 2, Berkeley County School District, and really got to present them in advance with our survey's findings, which show overwhelming support for a lot of new initiatives to address some of the longstanding problems in our schools here. And one thing that I learned on Tuesday was that these particular panelists, they've heard this. They appreciate the results. They now know people want these things and are trying to implement them. And some they've already been trying, and now they have the federal funding, hundreds of millions of dollars headed this way to divide among the school districts here, and have an opportunity to really get something started and see if it works with the 3 years they have to spend this money.
Now, obviously, you just mentioned some of those panelists heard some of the concerns from the community. When they looked at the data and heard what they've heard, what matched?
It was interesting. They one of the biggest problems, and Quintin, you'll remember, but for your listeners' standpoint, the Charleston Forum has done surveys in the last 2 years. In 2020, we did a survey really that focused on the areas that we've been doing panels and presentations and big events about, and just said, let's go to the whole community, and did a survey of the Tri-County area to find out, okay, first of all, do we agree that we want to head the same direction? Do we have the same goals? And it was an overwhelming yes. Everybody wants, for example, in education, everybody wants all children to have the opportunity for a great education. And if some children need more assistance or better services to get that, then yes, that's where we should provide those services. And then there was a big question, though, of whether we were actually doing well at this or not. And really, a lot of people said we're not. And so what we did this year is we went out and gathered all of the things that have been proposed in the Charleston Forum events to date, and went to a lot of the groups who are working in these areas already and said, what needs to be done? What policy proposals do you think would be effective? And do you think these school districts need to implement? And so we put those out in a survey for this year, and the education portion, of course, is focused on these things. We have criminal justice, policing, economics, et cetera, coming also. But for the education standpoint, one of the biggest problems that the first survey told us, to get to your immediate point about what specifically resonated here, is that the lack of parental involvement or family involvement. People saw that as a huge reason for failure for particular students or for particular schools. And some of the proposals that address that are help connect parents to other services in the community or in the school, and help parents get involved. Let's get some parent advocates. Let's get some people involved to actually bring the family and the school system together for the benefit of the children. And so what we learned is that the various school districts are doing this to a different degree. Charleston County has parent advocates, and they want to have more and want to be able to do better. Berkeley County was doing had social workers, and they've applied to have more social workers who are licensed and able to go out and address the kids' needs, and really help find the services that are necessary for that child to be able to succeed. One of the things interesting that I forget, one of the panelists and maybe even the moderator pointed out was, kids are only in school 20% of their waking hours. So we need to find a way that that the whole community can support their learning environment, after school programs, et cetera, and have these advocates help really help the children reach the services that are already there.
And this might be a tough question, but how many social workers are needed in Charleston County?
Well, in Charleston County overall, I'm sure that would be a big number. I don't have the numbers for the advocates or the social workers. I know in Berkeley they were seeking an additional 4 or proposing an additional 4 social workers. I think maybe they only. Yeah, I'd have to go back and review the video, which would be available on the Facebook stream and on our YouTube channel. And I believe maybe 3 is the number that they have now. I think I recall that, but they're looking for 4 more. Which obviously would really expand the services there.
And I know the goal is to ensure all students, regardless of color or socioeconomic status, have the opportunity to earn a quality education. What is the socioeconomic status in those aforementioned counties?
Well, it's very different by schools, and that's one of the problems. Is how do you address the areas where certain schools don't, people are in a different position than in others. And, one of the policy proposals that people have been advancing that the community overwhelmingly supported was reallocate your resources to where they're needed most. And that's not just dollars. That's put your most experienced principals and your most experienced teachers in the schools who need the most help, and give them discretion and authority to make decisions with personnel, et cetera, and really change the dynamic at schools where things aren't going well. And a lot of times that's at least in our current circumstances, those places are most often found where there's lower socioeconomic status. But I will say that the superintendent for Dorchester 2, he mentioned that, hey, we are last, or claiming that I shouldn't put words in his mouth, very low on the list of teacher pay in counties in South Carolina. Yet he's very proud of what those schools and teachers have been able to do. I think they're in the bottom 10 of teacher pay, but in the top 10 of test results. So congratulations to them. That is not an easy task, but it does go to show that it's, that among certainly other things like the Meeting Street schools, et cetera, shows with a different approach, you can have, the kids can succeed anywhere if you give them the chance.
Since you all started the Charleston Forum, obviously 2016 to right now, how has the teacher pay increased in Charleston, Berkeley, and Dorchester counties?
Well, I don't know the facts on how it's increased recently beyond the state legislation, which was $1,000 increase, and I know Charleston County has had the opportunity to be out and go recruiting, and that's a benefit that certainly some of the other districts don't have and don't have the same pay scale to be able to do that successfully anyway. So they certainly have that on the agenda of increasing pay, and that is again one of the areas that the public overwhelmingly supports.
Now, let me ask you this, Brian. When you talk about obviously the need for putting experienced principals and staff members where they need to be in schools, where exactly is that happening in Charleston, Berkeley, and Dorchester?
Well, I don't know where that's happening. That is one of the policies that's being pushed, and perhaps we'll hear more about that on Friday with the panelists at starting at 11:30. But Quintin, as we said, the Tuesday event, we were talking with the people in power who are trying to make things happen. And I will stress, these people are public servants, and thank them for their service. More power to them. That doesn't mean we think they've done it all correctly so far or done everything they can do or will be able to do with this new funding. And so now we're looking at people who are in the community who have really been working on education for years, and let's help them hold the public officials' feet to the fire now, especially with this opportunity with a new source of funding to really take advantage of the proposals that these groups have been working on for years.
I have a couple of wild questions for you, Brian. Of
More?
course,
Of course.
let me ask you this. How did you all measure obviously the social economic status for most of these kids in Charleston, Berkeley, and Dorchester?
Well, those are really based on data and other surveys and other the Avery Institute survey was a good founding document to really show the disparities among schools and among demographics within the school district here. We got the demographic information of our survey respondents and asked them for their information, which helps show us that really, it shows you how much support there is among all different demographics for these particular changes.
Right.
But the school demographics and the socioeconomic status there really are in a sort of, we've looked at those issues in documents that have been sort of made publicly available through other studies.
Now, how do you actually measure the neighborhood's socioeconomic status?
Yeah, again, that's something that's based on income and property tax and property values. And so you look at the property values and the income basically of the district or of the school basically the school zone.
Yes, sir. And let me ask you this too. What are those school level effects of social intake?
Say again, I'm sorry?
Yes, what are the school level effects of social intake?
Of dealing with a socioeconomic status.
Right.
Those, it's hard to place exactly how that affects anyone. It's just that particularly, the Cradle to Career Collaborative, they've done a lot of research to identify not necessarily contributing factors. It's not that someone with a low socioeconomic status is that impacts them necessarily, but those conditions in those communities the schools are having more trouble in those areas. And, there are a lot of these innovative programs and innovative schools, like everyone likes to say the Meeting Street Academy because it's done so well and it's really serving as a model for other areas to show that, that with a different approach and a more, a little better focus and trying some of these and not relying on the same old thing that hasn't gotten us good results, that you can get good results anywhere.
Yes, sir. And what exactly are those contributing factors that you've all discovered?
Well, the race and socioeconomic status have been shown as the overriding factors associated with underperforming schools. And so that is why, we are making a big point that everyone supports making these schools better and giving children in these schools everything they need to get as good of an education as everyone else.
Then how can the community help those teachers and administrators understand issues such as bias and systems, I hate to say it, of oppression?
Yeah, well, I think this is the Forum survey is a big start, and I think they're responding. Some of the districts are putting out their own surveys. Okay. I think really it just takes people speaking up, and so hopefully we'll get more people at the event, and you can ask the question and answer on the Zoom feature, and we'll keep pushing. This coming Friday, but then I think it helps to. I would love for people in different groups to take this survey and go to their school districts or go to the State House and say, look, this is what everyone here wants. What are you doing about it? Why can't we get our better principals in this school, for example, if you have a child in one of these schools? Everyone, overwhelming majority of people support that.
And how could local schools ensure that all students actually have access to equitable educational opportunities?
Well, as you know, Quentin, the pandemic really created a problem with a lot of school, really delivery of the services for schools. And one of the forum's first events after we all went virtual was with Congressman Clyburn, and he had a big push for broadband access in more remote areas and in areas with less resources. And again, that really provides opportunity for kids to not fall behind when something like this happens, where they have to be remote, and to continue their education outside of school with other programs. And so, that's one tool that's available, and it certainly, again, is something that has overwhelming support from Tri-County residents.
And I know obviously the survey identifies areas where the public don't think that the school systems are meeting expectations. And I'm being redundant probably, but what expectations are currently being met?
Well, we basically, the 2020 survey really asked, do you think the school system's broken? Not necessarily, we weren't able to break it down and saying, where do you think it's doing well? It was, is this what we want it to do, which is provide everyone that opportunity, and is it doing that? And so then if it isn't, the idea was, okay, how do we fix it? And so then really we could gauge, do people think that the school systems aren't given enough money? Do they think they don't spend enough money on the teachers? Do we think that they don't, have maybe the disciplinary practices are a problem? You want to, rather than suspend everyone, let's focus on an alternative way to keep people in the learning environment and address disciplinary issues. So there are a lot of things like that where there are suggestions for improvement in those areas, more than perhaps the school district officials would have appreciated more of a pat on the back. But we weren't in the business of telling them they were doing great in certain areas, and really just trying to focus on what wasn't working and how we can make it better.
So let's fast forward to tomorrow at 11:30 a.m. What areas do you want to expand on in that next conversation?
Well, I'm really looking forward to it, Quentin, because the panelists we have been working in education for years and have been pushing, a different approach on and not just pushing a different approach. They have the data to support why their different approaches are better. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing, Phyllis Martin with Cradle to Career. Bradford Swan helped, I believe, start Charleston Rise, of getting parents involved, which, as we talked about, that's what makes things happen. Let's get people out there. Let's get people focused on these programs that have been identified as viable, successful approaches that are different than everything we've been trying so far. And I always like to hear my friends Kylon Middleton and Darren Goss share their wisdom with us. So, I'm looking forward to it. They got to hear what the school district officials said they were doing and wanted to do, and so I'm looking forward to their perspective on whether that's are we all satisfied with that? Do we think there's something more that are missing, and what should really be pressed? Again, it's such an opportunity to have this federal funding come and really rejuvenate a lot of these efforts to make education better, without having to say you're cutting somewhere else. So, let's get the best programs out there, and let's get everyone behind them and make it happen.
And I just had Dr. Kylon Middleton on 2 weeks ago, and of course Darren Goss a couple of months ago. But
Great.
Yes, sir, absolutely. And if we want to obviously listen to this next conversation, where should we go?
Well, you can register on the forum website. It's thecharlestonforum.com, and go to the 2021 events page and register, and you'll get a link sent to you. And that way, you'll be participating in a Zoom webinar, and you can ask your questions and answers. If you if that's a little too much effort for you, you can just go to our Facebook page and it'll be streaming live starting probably just a couple minutes after 11:30.
Oh, that's amazing. Looking forward to it. Well, Brian Duffy, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Always great to be with you, Quintin. Thank you very much.
Thank you.